watching Melody Lane. With me you're gonna have a great crafting time.
Well, hello crafty friends, it's Holly with Melody Lane Inspired, and I have this awesome mermaid scales holographic vinyl that I got in the Sparkling Gemstones Mystery Box. And I thought how cool it would be to personalize school supplies for like a little girl, or in my case, for me, because you're never too old for like mermaids and unicorns. So first thing we're going to do on our canvas is I'm going to go ahead and search for a mermaid tail. And I want to find a very simple one because I just want a simple design that I can cut out, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the offset knockout with it with my name on it. Now when I made the project, I was planning on cutting out the rectangular piece and then taking out the inside. But I actually ended up changing that at the end because I like the mermaid scales on the actual mermaid tail. Now this mermaid tail actually has 2 layers, so I'm just going to go over here and I can go ahead and hide the layer I don't want. You could also just delete that layer, but if you don't delete or hide it, you definitely have to ungroup those. I played around with it a little bit just to see what direction I liked it. Did I want the tail up? Did I want the tail down? And remember, you can always hit the unlock button up there by the sizes, and then it allows you to rescale it here. That way you can pull it like wider or taller or however you want to rescale that image. So let's go ahead and add some text to this. So we're going to go ahead and click on text here. And then you can type whatever you like here. After we've done that, then we're going to go ahead and pick our font. So I'm just going to move this up here. I know this is like the hardest decision is the font picking. And you can go ahead and just drag this font window and then move it out of your way. That way you can see it as it's changing the font. I always like to go into my bookmark fonts because that's where I find my favorite ones. But in this one, I had a special font in mind that I wanted to do, which is called Hello Darling. I like a fine, thin cursive for this style for the cutout. I just think it looks really nice with it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and resize it and then get it how I want it placed on the mermaid scales. So I'm going to go ahead and get it about the length and the height that I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and go up to curve because I do want a curve of this so it kind of follows the mermaid tail there. And then you just drag it for how much of a curve you want it to have. Now I'm going to the right of the midline divider. If I wanted it to curve upwards, then you would just drag it to the left. And then you can just play around to get it in place how you like. Now you do want to think when you're positioning this, you're not going to slice this out, you're going to make an offset, but you are going to want to make sure that each of the letters is going to cut out of the shape when you do that. So now we're going to go ahead and create that offset. So we'll just go up to the top and click offset. Now we want to create an offset, so we're going to drag it to the right of the middle divider, and then you can just drag it and see how big of one that you want. And you can choose your corners, whether you want it around them or squared. I want to drag it so I definitely have a big enough offset that it's all one word and not separate pieces. Here I move the text out of the way. You don't actually have to do that. I just find it easier sometimes when working with different layers. All you want to do here is make sure you selected that offset and the tail and then choose slice. And now you can go ahead and just delete all of the pieces of the offset that we cut out. We want to be left with just the mermaid tail here. And then I'm just going to move my name back in place here since I moved it over. And I just want to look that it's got the even spacing around that. And just one step left here, we're going to choose our mermaid tail and our rectangle. Go ahead and choose combine and hit subtract. And that is going to subtract it out. You could also slice if you want and then delete the pieces you don't need. And voila, it's done. Now, originally I planned on using it as this whole piece here, but when I make the project, I'll show you, I actually decided to use the negative space of the mermaid tail. Okay, now we're going to move on to the second one, which is the initial with the name cut out. So I just went ahead and went to shapes here and grabbed a square. And I know I want this to be 5.5 inches, so I can go ahead and type that there. Don't have to type in the height because it's locked and it's a square, so it's going to make the height and the length the same. Now we're going to go ahead and grab that text again, so click on text. And when you grab a text box, if you start typing right away, you can edit it. But if you move it around or something, just double click and then you can go ahead and type also. Now we're going to go back to text and we're going to get an H. We just need an H to cut out. Now how I like the fine thin to cut out there, for the actual initial, I like it to be a thicker letter. Because it'd be very difficult to read with cutting an offset out of that fine font there. It wouldn't work well. So I like it to be a little chunkier of a font. And when you're picking your font for the initial also, you want to have like some nice straight lines to put it on. I ended up choosing Baylac here, which is great because on that H, it gives me a perfect straight line to go ahead and put that name in. I want to make sure it's centered, so I can just drag my mouse over both of those, hit align and center, and it's going to center that for me. And then you can go ahead and rotate the name and then stretch it as big as you'd like. Don't forget to unlock that way you can rescale it. And I just went ahead and changed the color here just that way I could see it on the black well. I'm just going to go ahead and bring that name to the front because I want to make sure where it's cutting out. I don't want it to cut all the way through the H, like where the Y is, but I do want to make sure that offset is going to cut into the H also. And then choose your corners, whether you want them rounded or straight, and then hit apply. Now, if you can see here, this isn't exactly where I want it because there is a gap. It's not going to cut. So I'm just going to go ahead and move it and resize it until I get it set up just how I like. I want to make sure all the letters are cut out on the left side of it, but I also want to make sure that Y does not cut all the way through that part of the H also. And I had grouped my font in the offset, so I'm just going to go ahead and ungroup here. Then I can select that offset, go ahead and click and hold the H also, and then choose slice. And now you can just go ahead and delete all those pieces of the offset of Holly that we had sliced. And there we go. We have the Holly cut out of the H. Now I did move it, so I just want to make sure these are centered. So I just went ahead and grouped both of these together. And I did drag my mouse over all this and then hit align and center horizontally. But when I seen that, it kind of looks off-center because I discovered I actually really want the H in the middle, even though the whole image that's centered. So you can go ahead and click and move that how you want. But I just think the H looks better in the middle of it. Now I need to slice that H out, so all I have to do is ungroup and then select your H here in the layers panel, which is the slice result, and then hold shift and select the square also, and then we can go down to combine and then hit subtract. And then we can send that to the back, and then we have our initial with our name cut out. Now we're ready to go ahead and cut these projects. They are ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and make this text black. I'm actually going to show you two different methods to put vinyl on. We're going to use the regular method, and then I'm also going to show you the wet method. So inside Cricut's Sparkling Gemstones Mystery Box, there was this mosaic vinyl sampler, and it has one of the sheets of this beautiful holographic mermaid scales. I just picked up a pencil box here. I got this off of Amazon for like $2. And then I picked this up at Walmart, and I love the holographic of it. And I was going to put some paintbrushes in it, and that was only $3. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and stick our vinyl onto our mat to go ahead and cut it. Now, when you're doing this, think about which way you want the scales to go. Now in Design Space, I chose holographic vinyl for my material, and it cut out of that perfectly. You're just going to want to get your vinyl off the mat. I like to just flip my mat over and then go ahead and take it off that way. So I was just going to go ahead and cut my two pieces apart, and I want to go ahead and cut all the extra so I don't waste that, so I can use that for another project. And for the black vinyl for my name, I'm using Cricut's new value vinyl. If you guys have not tried this value vinyl, believe me when I tell you, you have to. I don't understand that it's value because I like working with it better than the regular vinyl. And in Design Space, the value materials all have their own cut setting too, so you'll just choose value vinyl. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and cut these apart, and that way I can have them separated and I can save any little pieces for scraps. I'm going to go ahead and weed this. Now, like I said, originally I was planning on doing the whole cutout, so this big rectangle, and I was going to put it on. But then I was like, no, I just really want the mermaid tail done in the mermaid scales. So here you have two pieces, so you can do it either way you want. You can go ahead and take the big piece, the rectangle, and put it on. Or like I'm going to do here, I'm just going to use the mermaid tail. Just make sure you remove whatever piece you don't want to put on. And then we're going to weed our name the same. And then, so remember, whatever you leave on the back liner is what you're going to actually transfer. And then don't forget to take out the little centers of your letters also. Now you're going to use transfer tape to vinyl it. You're going to use transfer tape to transfer the vinyl. Here I'm using Cricut's linerless transfer tape. I just cut a size I need. I also really like to de-sticky this some, especially with working with this fine font. So just go ahead and take that transfer tape and just stick it to your shirt, your pants, something. It just works a little less sticky with getting these fine fonts off. Go ahead and smooth it down across it. I was looking at it and realized I didn't have quite enough transfer tape for the end of that Y. But no worries, because I'm just going to cut a little tiny piece of transfer tape and stick that to the other transfer tape to cover that little bit of the Y. Which you could transfer it possibly without it, but it's just a really fine font, so I just want to make sure that I do have it so it'll go on and not kind of curl over on itself. Then I always like to flip it over and take my scraper to go ahead and make sure that is sticking to the transfer tape side. And now for this piece, I'm just going to go ahead and stick my transfer tape down and then go ahead and smooth it across. You can start in the center and push it out, or depending on what I'm working on, sometimes I start in the center, sometimes I start on the end and move it across. But they say starting from the center gives you less bubbles. And I like to go ahead and cut this. I find it easier to cut. It depends on what scissors I'm using especially. But these certain scissors, it gives me a tough time cutting through this linerless transfer tape. So I like to go ahead and just cut it with the backing on, and then it cuts through super easily. I'm going to go ahead and take the scraper to the back of this also. That way the vinyl really adheres to that transfer tape. Now let's go ahead and take this liner off the back. So we're going to peel this back, and you want to do it straight across it. And go slowly. You want to make sure all of your edges are stuck down. And if they're not, then you can go ahead and flip it over and use a scraper on it again. And then once you get it where you want it, go ahead and press it down. I go ahead and take my scraper and move across it. And I do find holographic vinyl can bubble really easily. And that's why in the second project, I'm going to show you how to apply it with the wet vinyl. Because wet vinyl helps you with bubbles. And then here I pulled up the corner, but seeing it wasn't stuck down. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my scraper here and go ahead and hit the edges. And something else I'll do with the design, if I go to peel it and it's peeling up, I'll go ahead and go to the opposite side of the design and see, because sometimes just how the design is might come up easier. So I'll just peel whichever way is coming up the easiest. Now we can go ahead and grab our name here. And when you pull that liner off, make sure that your vinyl is stuck to the transfer tape, which it did here perfectly. And then take your time getting this lined up. I went ahead and tilted the pencil box up. That way I could get really good view on it to make sure I get this font really centered in that offset. And then go ahead and take the scraper to it. You want to really make sure that that's going to adhere and come away from the transfer tape. The finer, the thinner the cutting is, the more it's going to want to stick to that transfer tape. So it's really important to scrape over it. And then this part, just peel back slow and make sure that all of your letters stuck down, which they did. Went super easily. And now we're finished. I made myself the perfect little mermaid pencil box. But isn't the colors on that holographic so stinking pretty? But now, can you see why I wanted to do the tail and the scales? Because I'm like, it's actual mermaid scales on the tail. Now go ahead and look at it. If you see, I was looking at mine here and I seen just a couple little bubbles. Like I said, holographic can bubble easily. So I just go ahead and take my scraper, and you want to work the bubble out to the nearest edge. So pretty. Now, let me go ahead and show you how to do the wet method on the next project. Now, for the wet method, we are indeed going to make it wet. So we're going to be using water. So I have this little spray bottle here that is perfect. It's my Tim Holtz sprayer. And you're just going to put water in that. And then to the water, you're just going to add a couple drops of dish soap. Now, I have also done this with Windex, too. And then go ahead and put your lid back on and then just give it a little bit of a shake to mix it up. And then we're going to apply the transfer tape and everything just like we did in our previous project. Nothing is going to change there. Now you do want to make sure it's applied to a clean surface, so if you need to, you can take rubbing alcohol and go over it. But here I'm just going to go ahead and take my sprayer, and I'm just going to go ahead and mist and make it have a wet surface everywhere. And it's time to apply. So just go ahead and peel that liner back. Now when you do a dry method and you stick your vinyl down, it is on there. You can't move it around. One thing that's awesome with the wet method, and I love doing especially for large projects, is once you stick it down, you can still move it. So you can go ahead. You don't have to necessarily worry about getting it perfectly centered here when you stick it on, because that wet layer is going to allow you to move it around. How great is that? How many times have you put vinyl down and it's just a little bit off? Well, with this method, you can reposition it. So then once we get it down, we want to go ahead and take our scraper and push. We're going to go ahead and we want to push the water out from under it. And then once you get the water squeezed out all the way, you're going to let this sit. You are not going to be able to take the transfer tape off right away, because think of it, it's just sitting on a wet surface. So I let this sit for, it was about 15 to 20 minutes, and you can go ahead and check it while it's drying. You can also go ahead as it is drying and go ahead and take your scraper to it again and push out any more water that's under there. And you can see if it's ready yet just by peeling a little bit back. If it's not stuck down yet, then go ahead and give it some more time to dry. And then once it's dried enough, you can go ahead and peel it back. And as you can see here, it's just sticking to it nicely. And we can pull that off. And then I always like to look over my design for bubbles, which I did see 2 bubbles here at the bottom. So I'm just going to take that scraper and then I'm just going to push those bubbles to the nearest edge. I find it way easier to get bubbles out when using the wet method. And there, it looks beautiful and bubble free. And now we're just going to go ahead and add our name here. And for our name, we don't have to apply that wet, so we're not putting any more water down. This is just a fine font. You're not going to get bubbles. The finer it is, you don't have a risk of bubble. I mean, you might have a little risk, but it's really hard to get bubbles in a fine, thin font here. I was just checking to see if it was stuck down, and it wasn't. No worries. Just going to take my scraper and go ahead and hit those again, and then peel back slowly. And as if you'll see here, I was peeling from the other side, but I was like, hold on, let me peel from this side, because it's the easier side. On the other side, it just had that thin line of the Y, but when I started peeling on the H, it was easier. So I always look for that when peeling too. And then again, you just want to make sure you get this in position. And we're going to smooth that down also. And slowly peel it across, making sure all your letters there are stuck down. And there we go. I have a personalized mermaid paintbrush holder now, and that makes me happy. So there you've seen applying the regular method and the wet method. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you learned something today. I just love these though. They just make the 5-year-old in me super happy. It doesn't take, but don't you just love the way the color hits it and it changes? Gorgeous. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you guys to our admins, Cricut, and our supporters, you guys. If you would give us the thumbs up, we greatly appreciate it. Go ahead, leave us a comment. Have you tried the wet method before? I'm telling you, if you're nervous about placement, wet method is the way to go. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe too. That way when we get new videos out, you will know. And whenever there's mystery box reveals, we will let you know as soon as those boxes come out, which they sell out fast. So that's great to get a notification and you get to see what's in the box. Well, until next time, crafty friends, happy crafting, everyone, and toodles. Bye, guys.